Before we get to The Walking Dead, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your work as a playwright.
Oh, that's what they all came to hear about.
I mean, you've got 3 plays that have been produced. Your latest one is going to be part of the Yale Repertory Theater this season.
Wow.
You've won awards for your plays. The new one, Familiar, what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, Familiar actually I'm really excited about because it is kind of the first play I've ever written that is about something closer to me. Generally my plays are about things I care about in the world, but they're not things that I've experienced. So Familiar was really inspired by my family, which is a rare topic for me to actually ever go near. But the whole concept of the family where, you know, it's very American and it's very 21st century and it's very old, you know, the whole concept when you speak one way and your parents speak another way because they're from another country, but you're very American and they never will be, you know. And so Familiar really is about a family that is in the Midwest where the children have been raised in the US but the parents are Zimbabwean. And it's the weekend of the eldest sister's wedding where she's trying to do a ritual that is causing a lot of havoc.
No stress there.
Yeah, a lot of really good fun stress. It's a good dramedy. It's also, it doesn't end tragically, which is very new for my plays. Yeah, but, you know, there's a reason I'm in The Walking Dead. You know, to dire, intense stuff.
Right, because The Eclipse was about Liberia.
Yeah, it was about women in war in Liberia, and yeah, that was dire. That was dark.
Yeah, I saw a scene from it. It's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was intense stuff. It was intense stuff that happens to women in war, which was part of what attracted me to The Walking Dead, because I just thought it was so interesting how it was shown. Seemed to me on the page, and you know, as I researched her, she seemed to be like one of those women in the Liberian war zone who kind of transformed when the world turned extremely hostile. And we all know, of course, women have an extra liability, you know, when the world turns really hostile, and there's no more structures, there's no more cops, there's no more, you know, anything to protect you, and so it really allowed some women really kind of turn into warriors, and that's what happened in Liberia. And so when I was researching Michonne, I was like, these sort of chicks are real. I interviewed them. They're very real women, and that really made me very interested in exploring her as a character.
Now, you were born in Iowa. You actually did most of your growing up in Zimbabwe.
Mm-hmm.
So how has Africa influenced your work and your life?
A great deal. I moved to Zimbabwe when I was 5 and I was raised there, but you know, I was raised in a very, I call it a very Zimerican home. Because, like, you know, my parents had been here for 20-some years themselves. So they'd been here from the 60s to the 80s, and so they had a lot of American influence in who they were. And so they raised their children with that sort of presence. They've been in the Midwest mainly, and then, you know, they did grad school in Penn State, but they were only there for a few years. They spent so much time in the US that there was a very Zimbabwean but very American home that I was in. And then I'd step into the world when I was in a very Zimbabwean place. So when I left, I think when I came back here for college, it really hit me that I definitely had a heart for Zimbabwe. It really hit me that I was both things. I was American and I was Zimbabwean. And I've always kind of wanted to bridge the gap between those two places, between Africa and the US, because I just think there's so many things that the US doesn't get to see about Africa. They kind of see one slither, and there's so many other. I had an amazing childhood, I had an amazing upbringing, I was very, very, very well educated there, and you know, I went to movies and parties, and you know, I was a pretty good girl though. And you know, went to a Catholic all-girls high school and like in blazers and pleated skirts, and I think that's just not what people think of when they think of Africa, but it was an African experience, and I just think that I'm always, like my plays and everything, I'm always trying to bring the African experience to the global stage, and Familiar is a real clear attempt at that fusion, you know, and just saying, you know, this is all, I hope this play is familiar to everybody, you know what I mean? This story, these people, even if they came from a different part of the world, it might sound a little differently. So it has influenced my work, I think, because I'm very interested in telling the African story globally and sort of connecting these two places that I'm from in some way whenever I can.
Yeah, because the multiculturality, if that's a word, shows up.
Maybe culturalism.
Yes.
Morality, they both work.
Yeah. That does show up in a lot of what you do. Now, I want you to tell us a little bit about something called Omasi Arts.
Because they came to hear about that. They're like, get to the Walking Dead, man. Omasi Collaborative Arts is it's a nonprofit I started, which is also very much a part of what I just said, which is that bridging of that gap. So it really is, when I'm in Zimbabwe, there's some amazingly talented people, but they don't have the access. And I'm in the United States and I've had so much access. I've been able to go to school and really develop my gifts. And we get to do that in the US a lot, and hard work actually does pay off in the US, whereas in Zimbabwe and other parts of Africa, sometimes hard work doesn't pay off, because the structures aren't there. So I really wanted to sort of help to create a structure. And Zimbabwe is so small that you really can make an impact. Not in the US, you really have to, really make an impact in a massive way. But in Zimbabwe, certain very specific efforts can really make a very powerful impact. So Omasi Collaborative Arts I created with a Zimbabwean woman who's also she's a director, producer, and we look to professionalize Zimbabwe's dramatic arts. And we basically do that by bringing Zimbabweans to the United States for mentorship or training, or we take Americans to Zimbabwe and we have them teach or direct different projects, productions, and we have them sort of interchange. It's also about cultural exchange, because as I said before, I really want that gap to be bridged for everyone to realize there is no other. Everybody is, we're all very similar as much as we are different, and there's so much to learn from each other. So I love it when I take Americans to Zimbabwe, and we're about to take an American there in a couple weeks. And I love it when we do that because it really does allow for a great exchange to happen where global citizenship is nurtured, and you see Americans learning some Shona and really connecting to a place they would never have come to, and then also leaving some really great professional traits left in the country, like actual, professionalized skills, because I want to grow skills, eventually create a conservatory where people can go to school for this craft, and you really have a viable industry that people can make a living off of the way they can in the US. So that's the goal of Omasi, but it's going to be a very long road.
How long is it? How long has it been around?
We're very young. We're going into our 3rd year. So we're very young. But we've accomplished some good things, so we just have to keep going. It's tough. Those first 5-6 years of a nonprofit are tough.
I assume it's on the web.
Yeah, we have a website. It's omasiarts.org. ALMASAI, just how it sounds.
Great. Well, I thought maybe I'd ask a question or two, talk to you a little bit about this thing called The Walking Dead. Since that's what they're here for. They put up with me asking questions that I was interested in.
You're being very good.
The scattering of the survivors this season, how has that affected you as an actor and personally? Because I imagine you're not seeing the people that may become your friends in the last year, that they're not around as much.
It has been very interesting. I thought it was a brilliant choice artistically. I thought it really was true. As I said, I researched war zones for my playwriting, and I thought it was very true to what happens in war. One of the key things that happens in a war zone, which is what I always look at The Walking Dead as, it's like the equivalent of, is that displacement issue, where you can't just pick up the phone, you can't, look up where they are on what their Facebook status says. There is no access to people you love and that you care for. There's just no way of finding them, and that happens in war zones right now. And it's what happened in the second half of the season. And I just thought that was really a rich choice by our of course, our wonderful showrunner, Scott Kimball, because I just thought it was so true to something that really, really, really happens. So I loved it. I thought that it was a really beautiful thing. I thought we all got to do interesting things with our characters as a result of that, because then they would hone in on different ones of us, and then some of us had time off, and that was cool too. You went away, you came back, you were refreshed, you know, ready to jump into the next episode because you'd had some time off and other people had been, you know, carrying the weight of the show and delivering it. So I thought it was a really awesome setup and very unpredictable. People didn't know what they were going to see from week to week, which is always a great thing. Yeah, you know, we missed each other, but we always knew we'd see each other soon enough. And we all got to see each other in that last scene of the NBC. And it was so funny because we were like all of us were got in this huge van and we're driving to set. And I had the song "Get Lucky" on my headphones, and I just started to sing it, and everybody in the van started singing "Get Lucky," and we all knew all the words. I'm like, what the heck is going on? It was such a great bonding moment because we hadn't seen each other for so long, and we just all kind of, you know, rocked to the set. So it's great to see each other again. But we always pick up right back where we left off.
That's great. One of the things that I found interesting this season with Michonne is the way her walls are starting to break down. And that particularly showed up in the kind of flashback dream nightmare sequence of her back in the before the war, if you will. How did you prepare for that? For doing that scene? How much earlier in the show did you know what her background was?
I'd known for quite a while. I mean, there was a teaser into it in the fact of how she responds to baby Judith. Exactly. So that was in the very beginning of the season. So, you know, I'd known for quite a while what the backstory was. I had to, in order to prepare for that scene, I had to know all that I knew for the scene in episode 9. Yeah, I thought it was really kind of wonderful to have her be a mother, because it just made so much sense for how hard and stoic she'd been in the beginning. Because if you've had that much love for another human being and you've lost it that brutal way, the shutdown is going to be dramatic. You know, the shutdown is going to be extreme. And so the Michonne that we meet in season 3 is the chick who shut it down, who shut down her heart. And so I thought it was a very smart choice. And it is a bit different from the comic book, but not completely. She was a mother in the comic book, but it's a touch different. And so it was very interesting. I thought the thing with the dream was the dream is a dream, and so there are things about it that aren't literal, and I think that was what was interesting, because some people were like, it's flashbacks. Like, no, it's not a flashback. It's a dream, but it does have flashback components, you know? So there are components of it that were kind of hyper-real, or, you know, the sword is suddenly in the thing, and she didn't have a sword then, but it's in the dream. You know, so it was this very interesting thing to sort of balance, you know, that she is in this realm, but actually, I read it, at first I was like, what? And then I kept reading it, and then you know, there's something very brilliant about how Kirkman and Gimple write, that if you keep looking at something on the page that they put down, it starts to like make more and more and more sense. And so then I started to say, okay, this is actually a dream where she's actually, you know, her subconscious is trying to make her heal. And what she did after she left the prison and she put down Herschel's head and picked up those 2 pets, was she was going back to who she used to be. And her subconscious was saying, you can't do that again. Because, you know, you can't did it more. You know, she was like reverting back and back and back and back. And so because she still had someone in her that was a fighter and that wanted her to live, you know, and she has a fighter spirit in her, her subconscious was really making her have to go through the healing. You can't just shut down, you've got to go through it. And that's kind of what that flashback was her going through the healing. Meaning, go back to the loss and experience it. Don't just shut it off. Go back and walk right through it and get to the other side. That's what healing is. You have to actually metabolize it and then get to the other side. So I was thinking, okay, I think that's what it means. And then I looked up dreams online and dream interpretations. And actually those exact types of dreams, that's what they are interpreted to be. Yeah, it's your subconscious making you do things you refuse to do when you're awake. So yeah, that really helped me understand what the process was for her and how she's shutting them off at the end of the dream. She doesn't want to go back. She doesn't want to go through the full healing, rather stay where she was really happy. And then she's forced to go back, and then she wakes up and the process has happened. And eventually she decides to heal as opposed to deaden, which is what that next scene with all the zombies is about.
Yeah, no, yeah, the whole sequence there was an amazing bit of acting and writing, beautifully. but did any of the other actors get jealous that you got to be clean?
No, they're so sweet. I mean, like, I saw like Andy and Norman on the day when I was all, dressed up, and they're just like, oh God, you look gorgeous, you look so beautiful. They're just sweet, they like being dirty. The boys like being dirty. They put more dirt on them. So, no. They don't want to be dirty.